A lot of abusive men act like the victim, but many think that they actually are the victim. And this is the part that will make you feel like you are losing your mind because he hurts you and you finally say something about it and somehow he's the one in pain. He's the one who's been injured in some way. You're trying to talk about your feelings, about what actually happened. And then you're here defending your tone or your timing or your reaction. He's acting like you did something to him. And listen, in his mind, he feels like he was wronged, but that doesn't make it true. My name is Lisa Sonni. I'm a certified relationship coach, and I'm an expert in abusive and toxic relationships. I've written 5 books, and I expose the tactics of abusive men so that women can get clear, make decisions, leave, and rebuild. Hit subscribe so you don't miss more videos like this. Now let's talk about why this happens. I want to do a full breakdown on why they play the victim, why they see themselves as the victim, and how this impacts you and keeps you stuck. Unsurprisingly, a lot of this is going to come right back to the concept of entitlement, right? A man like this, he centers his own internal experience above everything else. The only thing that matters is what's going on in his own mind, right? So he has this belief, true belief, that his feelings matter more than anything else. So if he does something to hurt you and you get angry, your anger will become the problem because what he did made sense, was justified, or he was entitled to act that way. So whenever he's uncomfortable, he acts like you've harmed him, right? He builds a case in his head, and that is the most crazy-making thing. But this is all just built around how things actually affect him, right? So he keeps track of moments where he feels slighted, where he didn't get what he deserves, right? What he is entitled to. And all of these moments stack up, even if they came from your reaction to something that he actually did. He expects a certain response from you. He is entitled to a certain response from you. And when he doesn't get it, he experiences that as injustice, truly. Your experience might completely disappear, but at best, it gets pushed down way to the bottom so that he can center himself. He can be the priority. And then he filters everything through this lens of he's the victim. So the story really gets rewritten here, right? So you might use an example like you set a boundary and he feels rejected. That's the problem. The problem is that you rejected him, even though what you did was set a boundary. How he rewrites the story is his own reality. You raise your voice at him because he's not listening and you've been arguing. So you've been calm. Now you get upset, you raise your voice. That's a problem, right? You're aggressive. But when he gets angry, that's justified. That's not aggressive. If you get angry at him, he'll call that abuse. But when he is screaming at you, name calling you, that's not abuse. No, of course not, right? That's justified. He's entitled to behave that way. And that entitlement really comes from superiority. This is exactly why, in fact, when you leave a man like this, he experiences it as betrayal. Like, how dare you leave? How dare you? He is victimized by your leaving. If you tell the truth, you tell him what's really going on, what you really see, that's an attack. But all of this is just the way that he shifts the focus away from what actually happened. And then your response, that's the whole headline. That's all that matters is your response because he wants his behavior, what he actually did, to not be the focus. He wants that to just quietly fade into the background, right? So he'll change the topic to how your reaction made him feel. He will center himself in this conversation because, again, that's all that matters to him. And you keep getting pulled into that version and keep trying to defend and drag him back to the original issue, but he's not interested in the original issue. The story moves away from reality, and that's on purpose. Now, I know this is kind of a tricky concept here for a lot of people, but sit with this. Just because he feels hurt, it doesn't actually mean that harm was done, right? People can feel hurt when they don't get what they want. Loss of control can feel like something was taken from them. In fact, something we say a lot about, I say abusive men, but men even in general, is that equality feels like oppression to so many men because they're not used to it. When he feels entitled to be superior and justified in delivering these reactions that he's having and the way that he's treating you, he feels so justified, then your reaction to what he's doing becomes unimportant to him. If you're not compliant, suddenly you're disrespectful. And that's why if you challenge him, he feels attacked. And these feelings, I think generally, not always, because sometimes they're playing the victim, but often they really think it. That's why so many women are like, no, you don't understand. He really, really thinks that I'm the problem. I believe you. Of course he does, but that doesn't make you the problem. His reality is warped. You can't operate well in a relationship, certainly not a healthy relationship, when you're not interested in equality or reciprocity. So the feelings can be real, but it doesn't make them accurate. You know what I mean? You can feel something strongly and still be completely wrong, but that distinction gets really lost in the moment. He expects what he says to be accepted by you as truth. And if you don't see it as truth, again, you're the problem. This is where things all start to flip on you. So let's say you walk into a conversation with him, right? And you're trying to address something. Within minutes, maybe even seconds, you're explaining how you said it. You start clarifying intent and, shifting things and trying to make it land better and like, okay, let's back up. Let me explain this again. Let me use an example. So many women also do this thing where they try to make an example make sense to him by using his work or his family or sports or something that he'll understand. Babe, he understands. Because if you were to flip this, he understands that the behavior is bad, but he doesn't see why it's bad to you because it's justified, because he's entitled. You've got to see how it keeps coming back to entitlement. They use a million different tactics, right? Semantics is just one of the best ones that they use, where they're defending a word so specifically, getting caught up on how you phrased something. But really, they're missing intentionally the purpose of what you're saying, the actual message. But this is where women start to lose themselves, because all of a sudden they're like, well, maybe I said it wrong. Maybe I should have brought it up at a different time. And it's so easy for you to take this on and blame yourself and look at how this came to be this way, how he could possibly see himself as the victim. But you can't convince someone that they're not entitled to act this way in one conversation. A man has to be willing to give up all the benefits of entitlement and misogyny and the patriarchy to start seeing things as much more balanced and to start seeing you as an equal partner and a human with autonomy. So anytime you sort of soften your point or you feel all this pressure to fix how he feels, you leave conversations and you're not heard at all. And so often you end up being the one to apologize. And that feels disgusting when it's actually happening, because you stand there so confused. He did something wrong and I'm apologizing. It is a wild experience. If you've ever experienced this, share that story in the comments, because I know that this really helps people to see what other people are going through. Now, let's really kind of talk about what this reversal really looks like, right? So say something happens and then he minimizes it or he denies it, right? The gaslighting, gotta love it. Your reaction gets pulled apart. Why you got angry. If you were yelling or not yelling, was it raising your voice? Were you angry, not angry? Are you sad, betrayed? Do you have a right to be? But everything turns onto you because your behavior becomes the issue. His feelings become the entire important part of the conversation. It is not about what he did. It's about his feelings now. He's the victim. One of the best ways that they do this, right? We're talking about gaslighting, but there's a subcategory of gaslighting called DARVO. And this was actually a term coined by Dr. Jennifer Freed, who has been on my podcast before, Relationships Uncensored. You should check out that episode. It was phenomenal. But we talked about this concept of DARVO. DARVO is an acronym: deny, attack, reverse, victim, and offender. So he'll deny the harm, attack you for even suggesting that he harmed you, and then play the victim. So he flips that completely, and they're really good at that. And what happens for you is that now you respond to what's happening in front of you. You're responding to him, you're treating his feelings like they're valid, and you're not responding to the actual situation. The energy of the conversation is gone now, right? It completely shifted, and you're on the defensive because he's positioning himself like the victim. And this puts huge pressure on you to fix something that you didn't break, right? The roles have flipped without ever being named specifically. So we talked about there are some men that absolutely just play the victim, but the truth is a lot of them genuinely see themselves that way. But I find it kind of interesting because the truth is most abusive men wouldn't necessarily identify with the word victim, right? They don't see themselves as the victim, but they see themselves as having been attacked by you. Right? They don't want to be the weak victim. They just want to be in the sort of lower position so that they can put all the focus on you, so that you stop asking him to be better, so that you stop asking him to change, so that you tolerate this garbage behavior. This makes sense to him because he's focusing on what he lost in that moment, right? Access to you, your attention, your agreement, compliance, your emotional availability, you regulating him, sex, whatever. That loss, it feels really, really big to him. And that's really what he's reacting to. Now, what would actually solve the problem, of course, is him taking one step further and actually looking at what led to this. But that would involve him to be accountable, and gosh, we can't have that, right? Abusive men hate accountability, and they will do backflips through hoops of fire to make sure that they never have to take accountability. They will firmly put everything on you. They externalize it. So at worst, the problem is your fault. And at best, the problem is someone else's fault. But you know where it never is? On him. He cares so much about his self-image. He doesn't want to have to look at his own behavior because then, God forbid, he'd have to actually change his behavior. So a lot of times, the bigger truth is that abusive men absolutely do see themselves as the victim because they feel very wronged in the moment, right? Like misunderstood and attacked. And the feelings are genuinely real to him. But that story that he's telling himself is not real. Just because he says he feels attacked doesn't mean that you're attacking him, and it doesn't mean that you have to change anything. Well, maybe that's not true. You probably want to change the guy. I definitely suggest changing the guy. You can feel hurt and still be the one who's causing harm. So he sits there all hurt, but he did this to himself. There's so many good examples, but like he screams at you and then you cry, and now he's the victim because you're manipulating him with his tears, but yet he made you cry. So that matters, but he doesn't want to talk about that part, right? The yelling was justified, so that doesn't matter. All that matters is now you're being manipulative with your tears, even though your tears are actually a normal human reaction to being screamed at. This is how they pull you into defending something that is just not worth defending, right? What is real, what actually happened, never gets addressed. And in all of this, you just lose track of your own experience, right? You start questioning what the hell actually happened. You spend so much time managing his feelings and making him feel better, but what you're not doing is actually naming your own feelings. Next time you have a conversation with him or bring up something he's done, you try it softer. You use easier words. You use a better tone. You don't bring it up at all because no matter what you do, he plays the victim. But all of this is you moving further and further away from reality. So watch how fast abusive men play the victim. Watch how fast they actually see themselves as the injured party when they were the ones causing harm to begin with. Stop trying to figure out if he's actually hurt and what caused that hurt. Stay with yourself. What's happening to you in that dynamic? What is the actual impact? Do you ever resolve the situation? Hit subscribe so you don't miss more videos like this. And if you want change, if you are ready to stop living in a relationship like this, work with me one-on-one or inside my group coaching programs. I have one specifically for this called Trauma Bond Recovery Group Coaching. We run these cohorts several times a year, and I co-host these 12-week programs with Dr. Peter Salerno. You can also join me inside my community called She Rises Collective that I co-host with therapist Shelly Pumphrey. This is where you'll access 24/7 support, live group coaching, workshops, special events, articles, videos that you won't find anywhere else. These are the spaces where women are actually doing the work and creating change for themselves. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.